Generously, he was a 3 out of 10 on the dad scale, and I didn't cry at all when he died. Now, this is not a dead parent story, I promise, but it's a good starting point. The funny thing about the fact that I didn't cry the night he died, or I didn't cry at his funeral, and 6 months later I hadn't had that moment that everybody said would creep up on me, was weird because I'm the guy that cries every year dependably at the Academy Awards. I am an emotional guy, but I didn't feel it. I didn't feel the need to cry, and I just kept waiting for it to happen. Later that year, I was at a conference, a work conference. I was there with my coworkers and my boss and a bunch of customers, and we were sitting in the general session waiting for the big keynote speaker to start. And I was sitting 3 in from the aisle, and another attendee came and took the seat at the end. And it was a woman. I saw her name was Doris. And Doris was visually impaired, and she had the most beautiful guide dog. Just a magnificent beast. It was so beautiful. Everybody just couldn't take their eyes off this dog. And they came into the aisle, and Doris sat 2 seats away from me, and there was the open seat. And this dog was here on the floor at my feet. I mean, I'm like literally 4 inches from my feet, and it's looking at me. And I just love dogs. And Doris was settled in and, ready for the speaker. And I know that the signs on the dog said, "Don't pet me, I'm working," but I couldn't help it. And I went, "Oh, look at you," and patted him on the head. Doris didn't like that. Doris got very, very angry and said, "I'm sorry, do not touch my dog." And I was taken aback. And I said, "Excuse me?" And she said, "Can't you read what it says? I am working." I said, "He's not working. He's on a break." She said, "Why are you so disrespectful?" I'm like, "I'm not being disrespectful. I just looked at the dog again." And she said, "You're an asshole," and got up and walked away. And it wasn't my best moment, but there in front of my coworkers and my clients and everybody, I said, "Fuck you, Doris." And I started to cry, and I started to shake, and I was pissed off, and I was sad, and I was angry, and I got up, and the rest of the day was gone for me. I sat in my hotel room, and I was furious, and I was crying, and I was so upset. The next week at the work-mandated therapist appointment, the therapist said to me, "I want you to do something for me." She brought out this big piece of construction paper. Maybe it was 11 by 17, but it felt bigger. And she said, I missed that joke. She said, "I have homework for you. I want you to go home, and before our next session, I want you to draw something for me. I want you to draw a line across the middle, and on one end, I want you to put the year you were born, and then the year that we are in now. And then I want you to put your first memory, the very first thing you remember. And then I want you to fill in the space in between today and that first memory with all the different things you remember, the highs and the lows, the best moments of your life, the moments that changed you, the really bad moments, the traumas, the disappointments, the sadnesses. And I want you to make the line as big as you need to sort of denote how intense that loss was, and create this thing for me." And I was excited because I love homework. And so I went home, and my first memory is so cool. I very clearly remember my first memory. I was 3 and a half, maybe 4, and it was the 1972 Super Bowl, and the Miami Dolphins beat the Redskins, the Washington Redskins, and we were a Redskins family, and my dad was drunk and pissed off, as usual, and I was so young, and I was watching the TV, and I remember after everybody else was gone and didn't care about watching anymore, I remember all the victors parading around a big silver dolphin. And I just remembered that dolphin, 20 years later, I figured out, I was watching the Super Bowl again, and a player lifted the Lombardi trophy. Have you ever seen it? It's like this pedestal. It's real silver and has a big football on top of it. The silver dolphin was the Lombardi trophy. And anyway, I showed up to this therapist appointment, and I told her about my first memory, and I showed all the highs and lows. And she said, circle the loss, circle the thing you want to work on. So I thought, well, clearly my dad's death, so I circled that. And she looked at it and she said, tell me about these two, because I noticed that these two, for some reason, you wrote them in capital letters. I hadn't even noticed I'd done that. And I said, okay, Nana dies, that's my grandma, and Ben is gone. She's like, what is Ben is gone? Ben was my golden retriever I had when I was a kid, and I'm ashamed to say now it's a different time, a different place, a pretty poor place. We grew up where dogs were outside animals, and they didn't come in the house, and they lived their lives chained to a dog house, and they lived outside, and you played with them occasionally. And one day, I came home and Ben was gone. Because in my life, in the world I grew up in, we didn't take dogs to the veterinarian. Dogs just went away when they got sick or were inconvenient. And Ben was gone. The therapist took the pen and she said, I think you need to draw your circle here. Now, I'm no clinical psychologist. I don't understand how the brain and the heart work. But it doesn't take a genius to figure out that sometimes the grief you think you have to deal with can't be dealt with until you deal with the one you hadn't thought of. I feel like my heart and my brain have a storage unit in there somewhere, and they just keep putting these relics in there, and I never know when they're going to come out, But they do come out. And sometimes they're silver, sometimes they're golden, but they always come out at the most incredible, impractical moments. Thank you so much.